my little film reviews. My name is Montero, and thank you for joining me on my journey to watch every movie ever created. Not really, but we are gonna get close. Oh, let me tell you what, man. The start of the year, it's not that good in terms of movies. I watched 9 movies in the month of February, and even though it is almost halfway through March at the time of this recording, I am going to rank all of them. But this time we are actually going to start with the best all the way to the worst, only because the worst might surprise you. So coming in at number 1 with the best movie of February is obviously Dune Part 2. I'm cheating because technically I watched this on the leap year, February 29th, but I did watch it in February, so even though it had a public release on March 1st, I watched it in February, so it's going on my February movies. I give Dune Part 2 a 9.7, but for me, whenever it's a movie that's actually good, that's very good, and that everyone acknowledges it, it's kind of hard for me to make a full review about it because it's all I want to say is it's good. Watch it, enjoy it. But for real though, there are just a cornucopia of mediocre movies that have come out this year alone, and we finally have just not one, but like, you know, we had a couple, but just one solid, perfect movie. Pretty much almost perfect. Honestly, the movie is huge. It's like it grabs the first one. The first one is already big in of itself, but it grabs the first one and says, "Get back in your lane," and fully takes over. It is a spectacle, man. I just have 2 tiny little gripes for this movie, but I do think that the pacing is just a tiny little bit off with certain characters and storylines and development that totally could have gone into the first one to, you know, have us have a little bit more breathing room in the second one. And then I feel like there's some storylines that were a little rushed or overlooked, and they were just there just because they needed to happen. And I think that that's fine. I love this movie, but again, these little tiny little things make me give it a 97%. It's so close to being perfect for me, but I am being harsh this year. But 9.7, the score in this movie, take earmuffs, cause it's loud. If you're gonna go see it in IMAX, and I suggest you go see it in IMAX, it's loud. Take earmuffs. I'm rambling, I'm ranting, I'm venting about the movie because it's so good. Coming in at number 2 is Ordinary Angels, and I saw this one for the AMC Screen Unseen, and this was a treat. This was a surprise. I made a review about this one, so you could go ahead and see that one, but I gave it an 8.3. I will say a little bit more about it before I move on, but I just think that this movie is a solid date movie for sure, especially if you are already married. Something that's just heartwarming, nothing that's overly complicated, a good palate cleanser, but a little bit more. You are left with minty movie freshness. The movie does drag out just a little bit. I think that's due to the writing. It's not bad. The main meat is there, and the movie only has religious undertones. It's not in-your-face religious, and I think those are the best types of movies. It's really refreshing. I do suggest to go at least checking it out. In number 3 is A Hero's Journey, the making of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Now, I debated putting this on my list only because it's a 54-minute making of Percy Jackson. However, documentaries are films and making ofs are documentaries, so this is a film, and I decided to put it on here. And it is, I only give it an 8 because I feel like the Disney Plus making ofs they're just like little after parties. They kind of like, hey, let me just show you what good time we had so that you can have a good time, but I want to see how you made the product. I love that you're all having a good time, but show me how you did it. That's why I'm like 54 minutes, man. You could have totally added 30 more minutes and shown me how you made the show. I would invest my time in something like that, but it's fine. It's totally okay. I mean, they do show you things, but they don't ever explain things, and I really wanted explanations about the volume that they used, or maybe the set, the weapons that they used, backstory on the weapons that they used, since they didn't have any backstory in the show. I just wanted a little bit more into this, but I did have a good time. I smiled all throughout. I had a great time with the cast, just them reminiscing about their experience made me reminisce about my experience with the books, and it felt very connected, and I liked it. Coming in at number 4 is Bob Marley One Love, coming in with a 6. So I spent a lot of time writing and rewriting what I wanted to say about this one because it ended up being a review in of itself, so I'm just going to briefly talk what I didn't like and what I did like about this movie. Honestly, there's some good, but there's mostly not good to the Bob Marley One Love movie. Honestly, I found there to be a lot of issues with this movie, both on an ethical and creative standpoint. On just the creative side, the movie has zero directorial or creative personality whatsoever. Everything feels too safe to the point where it's just bland and just boring and amateurish. It feels like you're watching a passion project, someone who just likes Bob Marley a lot and didn't really do a ton of research because it feels insanely biased, which of course a lot of these movies are, except for Baz Luhrmann. Those are great. But this movie was produced solely by, I think, his sons, or rather his family. So this movie makes him up to be some angelic saint, and it's very heavily documented that Bob Marley was not. And then this movie puts a lot of agenda stuff forward in unnecessary types of way. One example, Bob Marley and his crew are trying to describe graphic design to their white graphic designers and marketing crew, and they are quite frankly not trying whatsoever to communicate clearly with these individuals. You have to remember that communication is key. And if someone can't understand you, they're going to ask you to repeat yourself. And that is not offensive. It's not. It's really not. If you ask me something and I did not understand you because I couldn't listen, or just, you weren't enunciating clearly, what's the problem of me asking you to repeat yourself? There's no problem me asking you to clarify yourself, especially if there is a language barrier, because again, the key is getting the message effectively and clearly across. I've studied communications and speech in college as a minor, so I know what I'm talking about here. I've gone through so many classes, I've done so many debates, so many competitions. I know what I'm talking about here, and that is something to me as a communication guy I just didn't appreciate, because in the movie, I guess slight spoiler, they get offended and they make fun of this white marketing guy, and I'm like, that's not correct. Because communication is key. Communication is key. I know I fail at enunciating and having clear diction at times, that I'm working on it. But when you have unnecessary agenda forward moments like this in your movie, it just pulls people out of it because you're not correct. Because again, the goal of communication is getting your message across effectively. So if you're gonna get offended because someone wants to make sure they get your message clearly, the problem is then you. Honestly, because of that alone, I really want to put Bob Marley really farther down with my rating, but I'm not. I'm only gonna give it a 6 because what I absolutely did love about this movie is Bob Marley's legacy itself. I loved learning about what Bob Marley stood for, even though I had to do a lot of the digging myself, because quite frankly, you cannot understand anybody in this movie, but also the movie is edited just jumbling and it's all over the place, man. It's all over the place. But I love what Bob Marley stood for. I love what his message is, and I love what his music represents, so much so that I do give it a 6. I give it a D- because D's are still passing for some classes, for some people. See what I did there? Coming in at number 5 is Players, a Netflix movie starring Gina Rodriguez, and I give this a 5.6. Basically, this movie is about a female Barney Stinson and her group of Barney Stinson friends who quite literally prey on people for the sake of sexual accomplishment and fun, until one day the main female Barney Stinson finally decides she superficially wants a relationship with somebody she meets from work once. Honestly, problematically generic and generically problematic would probably the way I would describe this movie, because that's just what it is. I will say that the stars give it their all. I wrote a letterbox review, so you can go ahead and view all of my thoughts there, but honestly, I will give it to the stars. They give it their all. Gina Rodriguez, as always, nails this role, but is it a role that should have been nailed? I'm gonna bleach my cranium now. This is just another bland, generic, annoyingly predictable rom-com movie that just has really no realm, or really doesn't really fit, or there's no space for this type of movie nowadays. It's just not good. I didn't like it. I was quite uncomfortable. But the thing is, this movie is fine. It's just fine. And fine is just okay. And okay is mid, and mid is not good, which is bad. But at least this movie does have Liza Koshy, who is completely hilarious in this movie. And it does have Joel Courtney. Remember that guy from Super 8? He's all grown up. He's looking like a snack in this movie. But I mean, that's honestly really all I got for this. Coming in at number 7 is Argylle with a 5.1. Now, I made a review, so you can go ahead and check that out at your will. The only thing I will say here is that I was completely bored watching this movie. And I saw it twice because I thought maybe I didn't get it the first time. So watch it again, because also the first time I saw it, the guy next to me ruined it. Again, I talked about that in my review. I did understand it, apparently. It's just a bad movie. It's just boring. It's just okay. And again, fine is okay, and okay is mid, and mid is not good, and not good is bad, at least in today's realm. Coming in at number 7 is Madam Web with a 2.5, and I kind of really want to make this a 3, but I'm not gonna. Listen, I know Madam Web is not the final movie, it's not the worst movie of February or the year after all. No, it's not. I also made a review about Madam Web, so you can go, you know the drill at this point. However, I do want to reiterate the fact that I do believe that all 4 actresses did the best they could with the material that they were given, specifically Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney. I think they both did acting pretty fine. And honestly, I kind of want to watch a movie with just Dakota Johnson as Madam Web and Sydney Sweeney as Julia Carpenter. Not whatever the frick they named her in the movie. Cornwall. I would watch a movie of just them and their origins becoming actually Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, and or having, Madam Web be like, okay, I am now Madam Web. I'm gonna teach you to be Spider-Woman. That would be okay. But instead, we got what we got, and it's fine, I suppose. But I think Morbius is worse than Madam Web, honestly. I think I tried to rewatch Morbius so that I can maybe rank. I had to skip through. I realized I do remember it. I just blocked it out of my memory. It was just, I don't like it. I can't watch Morbius. I cannot rewatch it. Madam Web, I feel like I could potentially rewatch Madam Web. Only once. I can't do it like more than 2 times in my life. It might be too much. But Morbius, no! Can't. And finally, for the worst movie of February, and I genuinely think this is going to be the worst movie of the freaking year, but it is Drive Away Dolls, directed by Ethan Coen and written by Ethan Coen and his wife, Trisha Clark, and I give this a 1.5. And I only give the 0.5 generously because I am reserving that 0.5. If something, it needs to be that, because I will make this lower. This is just awful. It's awful. This movie is the biggest Freudian slip I've ever seen. Husband and wife wrote this, so which one of them is gay? Which one of them is trying to tell the other one that they no longer want to be in a heterosexual relationship, but they want to be in a It's the only explanation why anyone would write this mess of a movie. I don't think this movie is funny at all. It's just chock full of the worst editing you've ever seen, and I've seen Madam Web. It just has the worst writing, the worst jokes. It's not funny. This movie is already short in of itself. It's 1 hour and 24 minutes, and it feels like 2 hours. Every single scene, the main girl just wants to have sex with every single living woman that she sees, and it's just so uncomfortably annoying. I'm pretty sure if you're straight, you're a gay female, or you're into women's in any way, shape, or form, you'll likely go crazy in this movie by how much uncomfortable lesbian sex there is in this. I'm sure if it's your thing, that's fine, but a lot of it doesn't actually serve the story. And just the main thing is that, I don't know, seems pervy to me. I wanted to walk out of this movie so many times, but I said, no, I'm gonna stick through it. I'm gonna sit through all of it so I can say I've seen it all, and I can say it is the worst goddamn movie I've ever seen. I just have to apologize to John Cena and Alison Brie now for rating Freelance at a 1. I'm gonna have to move that up to a 2, maybe even a 2.3. Nah, just a 2, because at least I can at least watch that one Yeah, I can at least rewatch that one. This one is unwatchable to begin with. And I watched it. I'm mad because the national debt is climbing and we used our money to fund this film. Oh my God. That is it. That is all I have to say about these movies. What movies did you watch in the month of February? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your ratings are, and if you liked any of mine. I'm aware that my list may not be your list, but that's the beauty of humans. Be sure to check out my Letterboxd, serialized Instagram, and my Patreon. All of those links are in the description below, and I will see you next time. You've just been Montified.